Jim Herold is the general manager of Rainier Veneer. That's an independent mill in Graham, Pierce County, that produces thin sheets of wood fiber. It's called veneer, I guess, in the wood products world. And you supply those to whom?
We supply them to people that make plywood. We have just about 5 or 6 customers. Our biggest would be Hardell and Chehalis and several in Oregon. About the only thing you can do with the kind of veneer we make is either make plywood or make LVL lumber, which is veneer that's glued together with all the grain running in the same direction. There's one of those plants up in Burlington that makes that, but primarily it goes to plywood.
And tell us about your company. How long has it been in operating?
Well, Rainier Veneer has been in existence since about 1992. It started life back in the 60s. North Pacific Plywood used to have a plywood plant down at the Tide Flats, and then they decided that they needed to get closer to the wood supply, get away from the traffic and some of the other things. So they moved out to the wilderness at that time and set up shop out in Graham. And they were a co-op, and they went broke and disappeared.
Civilization followed them out there, though, didn't it? You're no longer in the wilderness.
Yeah, it sure did. We have houses right next to us now. When they built the plant out there, it was pretty much the only thing out there. But yeah, now there's neighbors all around.
Let's talk about what's the process. You start with...
Okay, we buy logs. We don't own any timber. We buy all of our logs on the open market. We get probably half from private ownership and maybe 40% from state and 5 or 10% from federal. Most of the federal timber comes from Fort Lewis, which surprises many people.
Okay.
They're our major supplier of federal timber. Anyway, we buy the logs. They come in on a log truck. We unload them. We put them on a debarker, take the bark off. We burn most of the bark to produce heat that we need in the operation. We use heat for steaming the logs and also for drying the veneer. Any leftover bark we sell to, we call beauty bark people. It's for landscape bark. We don't bag it. We sell it by the truckload, and then it's dispersed from there in smaller units.
Now, are the logs that you're able to use particularly unique, or is this more of a utility type grade?
It's not really utility. It's what we just call sawmill grade.
Okay.
We buy logs that are between 6 inches and 30 inches in diameter. Douglas fir and hemlock. We buy a little bit of cottonwood, but mainly Douglas fir and hemlock. And after we buy those logs, take the bark off them, we cut them into lengths, and then we spray them with hot water. And the hot water softens them so that they cut easier. And then we take them into what's an interesting process to see, where we peel them on a lathe.
So you're cutting them, you say, but it really is longitudinally and
right. We just cut them into lengths with a saw, and then we put them on a lathe that chucks the two ends. We call them chucks, and it grabs the logs on the end and spins them against a big long knife. The logs are 8 feet long at this point. They're called blocks, and they're spun against this knife. And I remember when I first saw it, I thought, this something that big can't be very sharp, but
it probably has to be.
It's sharp enough to shave with. It's razor sharp.
So it's slicing off and you end up with a long stretch of wood fiber?
Exactly. It looks a lot like toilet paper just being unrolled off a roll.
How thick is that?
We peel anywhere from 1/10 is about the thinnest up to 228, which is almost a 1/4 inch.
Okay.
And so on a small log with thick peel, it just takes a couple wraps. On a bigger log with a thin peel, it takes a little longer. But it's something that I've been watching for 30 years and still look at every day and never get tired of looking at it.
That's pretty amazing to think of any mass that large that's spinning and actually peels off. And is there a core left? You get down to a...
Yeah, we go down to about a 3.5 inch core. In fact, we sell the core. When the industry first started, the cores they had were bigger than the logs that we start with oftentimes today. They peeled down to about a 12 inch core. And with the big logs they had to have bigger chucks on the end to keep them from spinning out. And so now we start with a log that's smaller than what they used to kick out.
Wow, wow. There must have been some technology change then over time. I would suspect that your cutting mechanism is more precise and more reliable than what they had 30 years ago.
Absolutely. and it's even better than what we had 5 years ago. With computers and everything, so much has changed. We have so much control now over thickness and speeds. To get smaller, we've had to put in additional equipment, what's called the backup roll, to help stabilize the log and spin it and get it smaller. So yeah, there's been a lot of technological changes.
So you get these long peelings off of the log and they go on out, and then what happens to them?
Okay, then next they go down a conveyor to what's called our clipper. And when it goes into the clipper, there's a little black box, and it contains a camera, and it looks at that wood as it's going by, and it looks for defects, basically holes, holes in the wood. And if they're about bigger than that coffee cup or so, it cuts them out. If they're not, it tries to cut it into what's called the 54, and that's a 54-inch wide sheet.
Okay.
And if it can't make a 54, it tries to make one that's half that wide, 27.
And this is all calculated and accomplished as the product is moving?
That's doing it on the run at about 550 feet a minute.
Wow. Machines have replaced people, clearly, in making those judgments.
Absolutely. And this is one of the changes that I've seen in my career. When I first started, we had a knife that just went up and down, and the fastest you could run it was about 200 feet a minute because the knife couldn't get out of the way fast enough to run it any faster. Well, now we have these rotary knives which turn in an arc, and they go with the direction of the flow. And I don't know how fast we can go, but we start running into issues about 600. But the accuracy is better at 550 today than it was running at 200 feet a minute.
Wow.
30 years ago.
So you get the sheets, and they're in 54s if that's a good size, and then what happens?
Okay, the 54s go up to an automatic stacker. This was my first job on the green was pulling on the green chain, where we pulled those things, but now there's automatic stackers that take the place of about half of those people.
Okay.
The 54s get stacked in one stack according to their moisture content. We have 3 sorts in our mill, depending on the moisture, because that affects the drying. Plywood is put together with each layer perpendicular to the layer.
Much greater strength that way, isn't it?
Yeah. If you we can take a piece of veneer that may be 12 inches wide and pull it across the grain, and it breaks very easily.
Right.
You take a piece of veneer that's only a half an inch wide and pull it lengthwise. It's incredibly strong. Fibers in wood are 50 to 100 times as long as they are wide, so it's much stronger pulling with the grain. That's why you can split wood easily, but you can't hit it with an axe and go 12 inches in.
Right, right. So by orienting the strand of the plywood pieces then, and then gluing it all together under pressure, is that the process?
Yeah, they put glue on it and press it together and squeeze it.
And that's what gets its strength then?
Yeah, and that's why you won't see a karate guy breaking plywood.
I got it.
Because
I got it. He'll orient the grain before he takes his chop.
Exactly. It has strength in every direction.
You've talked a lot about equipment, Jim. How many people are involved in Rainier Veneer?
We have about 70 people, and that's top to bottom. There's myself and about 6 other people that work mostly in the office, a couple of log buyers, and then there's probably about 20 on each shift, and then plus some maintenance people.
I'm guessing that with the housing market and building construction way slowed down in comparison to recent years, that your company has also felt an impact.
Oh, absolutely. We'd like to run 5 or 6 days a week. Right now we're running 4, hoping we can hang on to that. Prices are down to almost 1990 levels on some items.
Wow.
The good news is at least log prices have gone down as well too, but yeah, absolutely.
But cost of the equipment and the financing for it, the wage rates, the rent, the taxes, they haven't gone back to 1990 levels.
That's right.
What's your business strategy? How are you going to get through this?
About half of the money we spend is on buying logs. That's our raw material. That's the huge cost. So we try to be smart when it comes to buying logs. That goes a long way. And we're developing an alternate product now. We're in the early stages of getting into making this fiber, the green stuff that you see sprayed along roadsides and stuff. That's made out of wood chips, which is dyed. That's going to take investment in some equipment and stuff, but that's the other part of it.
So as much as you are a basic wood products related industry, you're having to change looking forward to find the staying power, aren't you?
Yeah, we're trying to diversify and do something else because it's a little uncomfortable at times having all your eggs in that one basket.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much, Jim, for sharing your story with us today on the program. And also our appreciation to Dave McEntee of Simpson Investments for being a part of today's show. To read more about these guests or their companies, look on the internet at www.businessexaminer.com, followed by SSBR. And thank you for being with us today. We'll see you again soon for another edition of the South Sound Business Report.